Hello and welcome to the show. Now, I've talked about it a few times during various videos, but I race a remote control car. This is it, a Serpent S411, a 10th scale electric touring car. You guys wanted me to do a video on it for some time, and well, I have recently acquired a GoPro. Thank you very much to Patreon supporters for making all of this possible. Figured I would have a go at filming some action. Now, typically, the one day that I get my camera and I bring it to a Go Racing, I was the only touring car there. The GT12s are sort of more popular racing at the moment. Normally there are some touring cars we'd play with, but yeah, typically this week didn't have any others. And these cars are quite different to my touring cars. They're a little bit smaller. They are rear-wheel drive. They've got foam tyres, though, that gives them a huge amount of grip. They're a little bit slower kind of acceleration, don't quite have that four-wheel drive launch out of a corner, but they carry a huge amount of corner speed, being smaller, being lighter, and having those foam tyres. So rather than just kind of filming, this was me just testing out the GoPro a little bit. So rather than just sort of filming races from this angle, the two orange cars here are actually having a really good battle during this one, I figured we were going to do something a little bit differently. Unfortunately, the orange cars managed to bump into the wall. And that is have a go mounting the camera to the back of the car, doing an onboard footage. Now, my initial idea for mounting this, as you can see, I got like a giant crocodile clip clamp, stuck it on the rear wing, and then taped everything down in the hope that it would hold. There was an immediate problem, as you will hear. The bodywork was catching on the floor. The shell was rubbing on the floor that made this nigh on impossible to drive. You can see it there, it's jumping around. It didn't really work. Basically, there was far too much weight over that. Now, I always knew, GoPros are very small and very light and so on, but when we're talking about a little remote control car, that added weight is a fair amount, and it's in a weird place. It's mounted quite high up. I always knew there were likely to be problems, but yeah, this one was a little bit too much, and eventually, well, I ended up stuffing it in the wall. Most remote control cars, certainly the we race, don't have reverse, so it got stuck there. I had to go and rescue it. After sort of bringing it back, changed little bits around, raised up the body shell at the back so it didn't keep catching on the floor, so we don't have the horrible scraping noise going on anymore. It's still very difficult to drive, and immediately, well, it's a fail race video. You know exactly what's going to happen with the car. We tumbled over. It did take some practice to get the hang of driving the car like this. With the way that the weight was mounted sort of so far back and so high up, the car was really awkward to get around. The turns have a massive two-wheel moment. Do manage to recover it, but yeah, the car was very difficult to drive. You still do get a sense of just how quick this thing is, especially when you can get it on the straights and absolutely floor it down here, but around the corners it is a real handful. You just can't push because it wants to go up on its side, it wants to roll over. I was trying to be careful, but again it was inevitable that something would happen, and now the camera's pointing up at the ceiling. The GoPro was holding on though. All of my tape work was doing the job. Now, it wasn't quite working, having it mounted on the back of the car. And the GoPro is a little too big to kind of mount inside. I wanted to have the weight, though, lower down and also a little bit more central. So what we did was tape the camera to the battery. So it's not actually clipped onto anything. It is just a good bit of tape wrapped around the battery and wrapped around the camera. And it is now in a slightly better position. The weight is still quite a lot on one side of the car, and I certainly had some concerns with that. And of course, we can't run a body shell anymore, and you'd be surprised the amount of kind of effect the body shell can have on lap times. However, with this configuration, things were much better. It's actually quite cool as well to see all of the workings, the suspension, the steering, and so on working as we run it through the corners here. This was a lot better to drive. I could carry it, you can see, you can carry a lot more speed with the car through the turns. And amazingly, despite having a camera sticking up on one side, it wasn't so top heavy. I was driving this as hard as I would without the camera on it, absolutely throwing it through the corners. And you can see the kind of ridiculous speed that goes on with these vehicles. Yeah, this is not a slow car around the track. You can Well, there's maybe one point on this circuit that I'm going on the brakes effectively, and that's the end of the long straight. The rest of the corners are pretty much point and squirt. You don't have to worry too much. It's just sort of let off the throttle and turn in, and the car will find so much grip. And being four-wheel drive, yeah, there's a lot of acceleration. However, the perspective sometimes gets the better of you. There's me standing up on the rostrum. I just misjudged it. I was trying to get the car sort of has a bigger swing as I could through the turn as we have a little reshuffle with the camera. I didn't realise until I put it back down again. Yeah, we'd popped the front steering off. That was not particularly good for the car. So it was working. It was working better. I then decided to have a go at actually racing. So I did a few qualifyings and so on with the car in its normal configuration. Went for a race. Did end up in the back of an orange GT12. You kind of get a sense of just how difficult it is sometimes to kind of react to stuff when it's from this perspective. I also see how far I miss some of the apexes from time to time, and it annoys me. But it's when you're stood up on that rostrum watching the car kind of go around, it is very, very tough to a judge, especially at the speed that this thing is going as we weave our way through these corners. I'm trying to chase down a GT12. It's so difficult to do with the amount of quarter speed that they can take. He makes a little mistake, but I have to check up. It's very close down the back straight there. You may be sort of seeing like the front wheels a little bit pointing inwards. That's just the GoPro lens. That's not the car being peculiarly set up on it. I'd make the most of an opportunity I get to go past, and then we immediately find ourselves back on our roof. One thing I will say with the camera up here, if you do clip something, it is of course far more likely to roll. It doesn't take very much to put the car up on its side like this, and at times it does just ever so slightly skitter across the track with the added weight and it being rather high up. But during this race, we do 5-minute races. Whoever does the most laps in the 5 minutes. My lap times were only a 1/10 of a second slower than when I didn't have the camera on and I was racing the car, with a body shell, racing it normally. Only a 1/10 of a second difference is another big two-wheeled moment from my vehicle. I was expecting a huge difference. I've driven cars in which a body shell alone has made sort of half a second, 3/4 of a second a lap difference. A camera and no body shell on this was only a 1/10 of a second, which is, yeah, I think quite incredible, really. So yeah, this is sort of pretty much full out racing now on board with this thing. As you saw, again, another big two-wheel moment, and it could happen. Normally you wouldn't be getting that with this car. Normally it wouldn't be a grip roll. Also, you may hear the tyres squeaking away. You probably won't over the sound of the drive and so on, but I've got fairly crappy tyres on my car. It was squeaking the entire time through the circuit. I'm again all over the back of the car. I slightly make a mistake. He tries to take a sort of a tighter line and clips the inside. I'm bouncing my car off the pipes a little bit. We're back to racing around on our own for a bit, but yeah, you don't really appreciate just the tremendous sense of speed until you watch the onboard footage of these vehicles. The GoPro was ever so slightly slipping down as it went around the circuit. I'd screwed the thing in as well as I could, but yeah, the camera was ever so slightly slipping down more. So you see more and more of the electronics of the car as I'm now chasing down a different one of the GT12s, trying to find an opportunity where I could close up to maybe get a pass on. Overtaking is so difficult with these vehicles. The speed that they take through the corners is really down to your opponent making a small mistake or you getting extra brave. Unfortunately for me, it was a mistake from me that would put my car in the wall. The camera is now, well, looking at the batteries, and that was also the front steering bit had popped off yet again. I don't know why. It does it every so often, but with this filming, it was really determined to cause issues. So there we go. That was some onboard footage from my remote control car. A lot of fun. Certainly a slightly weird experience driving or sort of setting the car up to run with this camera on it. But yeah, it was quite good fun. And certainly some very interesting. That's the first time I'd seen kind of onboard footage from my car at the speeds at the sort of circuit that I drive around. Yeah, it's brutally fast. But very good. Very, very good fun. I would also like to take the time now to say a big thank you to my Patreons who have been supporting me. It did far better than I ever really expected, and it's allowed me to buy a whole bunch of camera gear, including the GoPro so I can do videos like this. It'll also mean that as I'm going to the Goodwood Festival of Speed this weekend, I shall be there. I should be there for the whole 4 days, in fact, at the motor show and the 3 days of the Festival of Speed. Should be doing plenty of videos around there, so massive thank you to you guys for supporting me on Patreon. There will, as there always is, a link in the description if you would like to help support this channel, getting more camera gear and doing more crazy stuff like this in videos. Would be very, very much appreciated. Of course, as I said when I announced it a while ago, don't worry, guys. No videos are going to be Patreon exclusive. They will always go up on this this channel, but it just does mean that I can do more crazy stuff, like sticking a GoPro on the side of a remote control car. However, that is it from me. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.